I released my book, The A17 Diary Vol.1, on November 27th of last year. It's already been 4 months, which is just crazy to think about that. And how much has happened since then, because it feels like it's just been last week. I was meaning to do an episode discussing this, but it's just been super busy. And now we have the time to properly go through. So I'm going to go through and share some of my favorite insights looking back on this. This is like a journal, because this book is, as it says in the subheading, it's a collection of notes to self while building a six-figure business. I have these notebooks that I keep, and I still have one. I have what's called book 4 now. And it's where I just write these notes to myself, reminding myself of what I need to do. For example, I was writing this morning, do the work in front of you, stop worrying about the future, because I've caught myself multiple times this week and especially lately, and that's something I need to hear. Worrying about the future, worrying about 10-year projects. Right, when is this going to be done? This is another project that we're working on in 10 years. What will it be like? Well, this, all these things, marriage, all these things that aren't, 3 to 10 years later. Well, there are projects that we're working on right now that I can be spending a lot more time on rather than just worrying endlessly about these other projects. So let's dive straight in. I'm going to be giving some of my favorite insights and linking them with things it's interesting, going to be going through somewhat of a life story. So these notes started in 2020 and run through all the way to November 2023. The first one, I love this one. It says, let your suffering have nothing to oppose and watch it simply disappear. And I relate this to something that Marcus Aurelius says in his meditations. Either Marcus Aurelius or Seneca, I can't remember who, but he says, leave your problems and watch them burn out like a fire with nothing to fuel it. And this also relates to something that Marcus Aurelius says, what's in front of the fire is fuel for the fire. So if you give it no fuel, if you give your problems no fuel, there are problems that solve themselves. There are problems that disappear, that you just give them time. Sometimes it's a person, sometimes it's a business issue. Just leave it time and it will disappear. Napoleon's famous for whenever he gets a problem, he always takes time before he even addresses it, and most of the problems just disappeared. They just solve themselves. There's another one here, and I just love this one. Upon the concept of memento mori, which is remembering death and remembering that you will die. And so it reads here, when you go to bed, know that you may not wake up the next day. Are you ready to end life that way? Is there something you left undone? And the whole concept of memento mori is remember that you will die. You are mortal and you will eventually die, and you don't know when that death is. So live a life where you remember death and you're constantly followed by death. Not haunted by it, but remembering it in the sense that you know the shortness of life. And I love, there's a quote I heard yesterday, a friend sent it to me, and I absolutely love this. It's by Luke Belmar, and he tweeted, those who died yesterday had plans for this morning. Those who died this morning had plans for tonight. So whatever it is you want to do, just do it. Don't worry about what others will say or think. Their opinions are irrelevant. I just love that quote. I retweeted it. I fell in love with that quote. That quote's amazing. And it's true. So when you say goodbye to your friends, your parents, your wife, your kids, whoever it is, it might be the last time you say goodbye. So say it like it's the last time. And if you get another time to meet them, then be grateful for that time. There's another part here where I write, doubt is what has killed several friendships. Do not allow it to kill yours. Remind yourself that most of the pain you fear exists only in your imagination. There's so many times that, at least for me, a lot of what you fear just exists in your imagination. It's not real. There's nothing there. You make a mountain out of a molehill, as they say. It's something small and it becomes such a big problem. Most of what you're worried about exists only in your imagination. It doesn't exist. It doesn't become real, and it was never real. It's just you making it up, and you get haunted by it. So don't let things that aren't real And it reminds me of another thing that I've said somewhere in this book. We'll probably get to it later, is where I write, look at things as they are, see things as they are. An action is an action. Don't interpret it in any way. See it as it is. Because when you remove opinion from these things, you see things as they truly are. If someone did something, then they did something. That's it. And there's another place that's related to what I just mentioned now, where it says, how much pain they've cost us, the evils which never happened. It also reminds me of another quote I heard. I think it's by Ralph Waldo Emerson, where either him or someone else, and he says, most of what we dread comes to nothing. A lot of the things that we fear and we are worried about, similar to what I was saying at the start about worrying about 10-year plans and 10-year journeys, is a lot of these things come to nothing. None of that happens. We fear this and we're scared of this and we make a million plans or whatever and worry about it, and it destroys our present. It haunts our present because we're stressed out, we're worked up and all these things. You're scared of a business failing because of a reason that it doesn't exist. And yes, if you're going to have plans over it, then have plans, but you don't need to worry. Worrying doesn't have to be part of the equation. If there is an actual threat that could happen to your business or your marriage or your life or whatever it is, if there's something that you can do, then do it. If there isn't, then don't worry about it. If you have taken those precautions, then stop worrying about it because you've taken the precautions. Whether it happens or doesn't happen, doesn't matter. It's irrelevant. There's a part here where I quoted Marcus Aurelius, and I just love this quote. It says, a sheep must not vomit to show its master how much it has eaten. This, to me, resonates with showing off. It's very easy to be controlled by ego, where you want to show how much you know, especially when you may have friends that you're ahead of in life, and it's very easy to get carried away and you want to show off, you want to be the guy that knows it all, but ultimately that doesn't matter. There's another part here where I said to care for less, more. As you go on, you realize that there are less and less things that are important. There's a quote by Alex Hormozy that I really like, and he says, the people who are ahead of you in life, that are more successful than you in life, they're not doing something that you aren't doing. They aren't doing something that you're doing. They are not doing something that you are doing. So it's not about doing more. It's about doing less, more. Doing less, better. Maybe you're focused on something and they don't care about that. And similar how with friendship, for example, as you move higher and higher, or at least me, when I've gotten higher and higher, I care less about how many friends I have. I'm friendly with almost everyone I know, but I wouldn't consider a lot of them friends. I care very little about the friendships, the acquaintances, and those type of things, but I care very, very deeply about the close friends and the quality of friends. A few pages later, I wrote, characteristics of a blessed soul: self-perception, self-examination. Its harvest is gathered by others, reaches its intended goal, not like a drama where the performance is incomplete if broken off in the middle, but at any point it has fulfilled its mission. Reflection on the meaning of things, affection for its neighbors, truthfulness, humility, or preference, justice in all things. This reminds me, I was listening to the Founders podcast by Dave Senra on Mateschitz, the founder of Red Bull, and there's a quote that he mentioned that I love that quote, and it's, the destination is the journey. I love the climb. I don't care where the summit is. That was beautiful. I send that quote to my email list. A lot of times we are so focused on, because we hear these things. We hear that the journey is important, and we know the journey is important, and what if you don't reach the goal? What if you don't? But we never think of making the journey the destination. About not caring about the summit in time, not caring about that. We just love the journey for itself. That's what we love. There's another part on humility which relates to some part of that, characteristics of a blessed soul that I was mentioning about, and it says, look at the birds, so high up yet so quiet. There was a tweet I was thinking of writing some days ago or weeks ago, where if you look at bodybuilders and the guys who are skinny, who have a little bit of muscle, just tiny muscle, you see them in tights, very tight shirts, trying to show off their body and look bigger. The guys who are medium wear just regular shirts. The guys who are a bit buff, wear super tight shirts. Again, they wear super tight shirts. The guys who are really buff, these other bodybuilders, the fitness influencers, they wear regular shirts, so it looks fitted and everything. And then the super huge guys, the ones who go to Mr. Olympia, Chris Bumstead, and all those guys, the world champions, you see them in oversized shirts. And so it's just something that I found interesting to reflect on, of how the smallest guys want to show off. The guys who have gone ahead of average, but they're not successful. They're not bodybuilding influencers. They're just slightly muscular. They also want to show off, but then the rest don't. The medium guys have nothing to show off, and they know they're not slightly muscular, so they don't want to, and they don't think they're slightly buff or slightly skinny, so they don't care. And then the buff guys, both the fitness influencers and the huge Olympias, they know their physique. They don't need to show it. And even relates to a sheep doesn't need from it to show its master. You can see that they're buff. You can see their physique. You know their physique, even if they don't have to show it. They don't have to show you that they are huge. They know they're huge. It's clear. There's another part that relates very closely to this, where I write, bragging about your achievements is unmanly. Rather, humility and civility are more virtuous and therefore manlier. A real man doesn't need to tell others how great he is. It can be seen in his actions, his reactions, his protection, and his character. The nearer a man comes to virtue, the nearer he comes to greatness. There's a part here where I write, do the right thing, the rest doesn't matter. And this reminds me of a conversation where last year in September, I believe, with one of my mentors. And he's a very successful businessman, billionaire. And I was speaking to him about some personal issues that I was going through. And he said, look, all of that doesn't matter. Because even when I was explaining to him, he was shaking his head. And he just said, that doesn't matter. Don't care about that. What does God think? Are you doing the right thing? Is God proud of you? Do the right thing. The rest doesn't matter. And that just hit me so hard. And there was something that happened after that, immediately after that, that if I didn't hear that advice at that time, it might have crushed me. And somewhat related to that is another quote where I write, life is too short to focus on things that don't matter. And multiple times, if you're reading this book, you'll see saying, is this essential? Is this essential? I continue asking myself that. This can even tie in with the concept of memento mori, where you're living your last day every day. You're living life each day as if it's the last day you're going to be alive, because it might be. And so life is too short to focus on things that don't matter. Don't waste time on things that won't matter. If this was your last day, and one framework that I like having towards this is, if this was the last day I was alive, would this matter? Spending time with my father, for example. If this was my last day alive, would this matter? Spending time on business. If this was my last day alive, would this matter? Going out with friends. If this was my last day, would this matter? Watching a movie. If this was my last day, would this matter? And that way you can just filter out things that aren't important. Of course, things like watching a movie, I'm not saying never watch movies. You can once in a while. Spending time with your wife watching a movie, or spending time with your kids watching a movie, or with your siblings or parents or whoever, then that's good. That's time together. If that was the last day, you probably still will do that. But just having that mindset of, it may be the last day. It may be the last day, or it may not. On the next page, I make a quote saying, do not complain about the dirt on someone's roof when your doorstep is dirty. And I believe this was from this Chinese jade philosopher. If anyone remembers his name, it's that guy. And especially now when I've began thinking more about marriage, because it's something that will happen in the next few years, this mindset is something that a lot of mentors, friends, and people I've spoken to about this have said something similar along the lines of, you can't demand something that you don't have. And so it's something that I try applying with marriage, in the sense of, I can't demand my wife to be this way or to do these things if I do not do them myself. So it's the focus then shifts from, my wife should do this, my wife should have this, my wife should be like this, to, do I have those things? I can't demand what I don't have. Am I doing these things? If I want her character to be like this, would I do these things? For example, I remember a thought pattern that I had. I wouldn't like my wife, or I don't want my wife wearing tight clothes. And then I began thinking of this mindset of, am I doing that? How can I tell her not to do that if I'm doing that? If I wear shirts, tight t-shirts that show my muscles or whatever, she may not be comfortable with that. Same way I may not be comfortable with clothes that are slightly tight on her. I prefer her to wear everything loose. She may prefer for me to wear everything loose. At the same time, she may be completely fine with me wearing fitted shirts and things. But it's just something that I have to keep in mind and I have to be ready to. So I began caring more about that, about, is this tight on me? Is this showing too much of my body? Is this showing my arm a bit too much? Is this showing my chest a bit too much? Is this too tight on my chest? And I began caring about that, because that's something that I don't want to be demanding of something that I'm not doing. You have to practice what you preach. Ultimately, it comes down to character. And if you want something character-wise, you can't demand what you don't have. And this doesn't only relate to marriage, it relates to everything. There was a time a few weeks back that I was discussing marriage with a friend of mine. He was explaining things that he would like in his wife. And he would always give the example of his mother, of, the way his mother did this, he'd also like his wife to be like that. And I just found it beautiful of how he saw his mom as an example of what he wants in a wife. And I thought of it the other way of, marry the type of woman that your children would look at as an example of what they want in a wife. That's the type of woman you should marry. And so looking at this from, don't complain about things that you don't have. So I said, all right, if you want to marry that sort of woman, you have to be that sort of man first, before you can demand that. You have to be the type of man. So I have to be the type of man, and I wrote it in book 4. I have to be the type of man that my daughter would look at as an example of what she wants in a husband. And so I have to be that first before I can demand anything. Another part here refers back to memento mori, and I mentioned memento mori multiple times because, again, death is something that I constantly think about and remind myself of, to make sure that I am living my life to its fullest and not wasting my time on the inessential. So I write, to live each day with a clean slate, leaving nothing undone and nothing unsaid. You may not get another day. And this is so true. There are a lot of things that I feel we want to say, but we don't say. And maybe sometimes we just assume someone knows and we don't say it. Call your dad. Tell your dad how much you care about it. Call your mom. Tell your mom how much you care about her, how much you love her. Call your wife. Tell her how much you love her. Hug your kids. Pick them up from school. Tell them how much you care about them. You may not have another day with them. Make sure that they know, and they probably know. They already know technically, but just remind. And there's a part here which relates to that, and it says, how do you want to have lived? And that's a question that I ask myself here, and I don't ask myself that too many times now. I probably should, and I think I'll start doing that. But it's just thinking about, how do you want to have lived? And it reminds me of something that Arden, he calls it the deathbed practice or deathbed exercise. Imagine you're on your deathbed. How do you want to be remembered? What type of life do you want to have lived? Begin with the end in mind. Know that this is the type of life that you want. So you want to be remembered as this type of person. So live that type of life. There's this quote here that says, so make goodness alone your goal. Have your action governed by the right principles. That way it will make no difference to you whether you live this long or that long. You have fulfilled your purpose. So live your life for those around you. Give with all that you can to ward off anxiety and not be distracted by this or that, and to give the world the same grace that it gave to you. The part I want to highlight on here is, have your actions governed by the right principles. Something that has really helped me is having laid out clear principles, and not too many. because you can make a list of 1,000 principles that you have or 100 principles that you have and you want to live your life by, but it's hard to keep track of 100 principles with every single decision that you're going to make. Whereas I have 4, and I adopted this from the Stoic virtues, which is wisdom, temperance, courage, and justice. Whenever I do an action or have a circumstance, I look at, is this just? Is this wise? Is this courageous? And then temperance is just keeping to those as a part here that I really want to reflect on, saying, if God makes you marry someone other than that girl, it means that the new one makes you happier. And if you still find that happiness or even greater happiness in someone else, then no happiness is lost. And if there's none whose presence makes you happy than that girl, then marry her. So if life goes either way, what's so bad? Again, this can come back to dreading what doesn't need to be dreaded. If this is good for you, then do it. And if it's not good for you, then do something else. If this happens, then it will be good. And just having that, at least from an Islamic and religious perspective, that everything that happens was prescribed by God. It came from God and it's for your benefit. And your benefit doesn't necessarily mean it's nice. It feels nice. It may be hard. There's another part here where I said fate is like medicine. It's prescribed to you for your betterment. It may be bitter, it may be unpleasant, but it's for your own wellness, it's for your own well-being, it's for your own improvement. And that's what you need to get better. Here, I'm going to share a bit of a very personal story about this. This was back in 2020. I was very young. I'm still young. But at that time, too young to even be thinking about marriage. Again, I'm still young, but I didn't expect life to move this fast. So back at this time, there was this person that I was thinking them as potential wife and getting married to them and all that. The time that I wrote this, if it happens, then it's good. If it doesn't happen, then there's someone else that's better. And what I love about this part so much, and when I was compiling this book together, I had to find these old notebooks. And when I stumbled upon this part, it was incredible. Because recently, actually in book 4, it's not even highlighted in this book 3, in this book. It's in book 4, which is the one I'm currently writing, because that's the time that this happened. Is at this time I wanted to marry this certain somebody. Marriage at that time was probably 10 years away. I didn't expect life to go this fast, and I didn't expect things to happen as they did. And then things happened, and of course we're here now. And now that, again, things have changed, life has changed, life went faster than I thought it would be. I didn't think I'd be at this point by now. But now that marriage is something that's real, and it's something that's 3 or 4 years away, and it's something that I'm seriously looking into, discussing with parents, talking to different people, different families. And there have been some people that came to me and asked me to marry them. And funny enough, one of those people who came was this person that I mentioned in these earlier writings. And I said no, because we'd grown apart and things just didn't work. And what I love about this is just the understanding. And you always hear that God wants what's best for you, and what happens to what's best for you. And you just have to trust it, because most times if you don't get what you want, then you don't get what you want. So you never know what it will be like to get what you want. You don't know if that's actually what's going to be best for you. So to me, this was like the perfect example of that happening. I'd prayed for this thing. I'd wanted this person for so long. And later on, when I learned more, when I grew more and advanced more, got older, got more experience with life and things, this thing that I wanted so badly earlier and prayed for came to me on a silver platter, served me exactly what I prayed for, to marry this person. That got handed to me. And I myself said no. I felt at that time, and I remember I wrote this in book 4, it's there. It felt like God was showing me that trust the process. If it doesn't happen, it's because it's not good for you. And look at things. You may pray for something, you may want something so badly, and it doesn't come, but because it's not good, it's not right for you. And you may not understand that until it's eventually presented to you, or sometimes it doesn't get presented to you. And you yourself say no. And that was really, really powerful because it made me think of things that I currently want, my business to grow, this to happen, all these things. I really want these and I pray for the success of them every day. The same exact scenario may happen. These things may not be good for me and I just have to trust God. If this doesn't happen, then it was not good for me. If this happens, it is good for me. And you have to understand that because eventually you may get handed to you on a silver platter. And by that time, you already know yourself. It's not good. The section here talks about what I was saying earlier with seeing things as they are. I write mountains, an accumulation of sand, dirt, and stones. The ocean, an accumulation of drops and rain. Just seeing things as they are. And also, as well as that, in addition, understanding tiny gains and the power of small things. The ocean, as big as it is an accumulation of drops of rain, small, tiny drops that are tiny individually, but when put together, when combined, when accumulated consistently over a long enough period of time, it becomes massive. Same thing with mountains, an accumulation of sand, dirt, and stones. Small things that when combined, when put together, tiny gains compound over time when done consistently. And so don't put barriers on small actions. Even small action is better than no action. No matter how many times you multiply 0, it's still going to be 0. If you have 1 and you just multiply 1 by 2 over and over, you just keep multiplying by 2, or even multiplying by 1.2, very small iterations. Eventually, it's going to become a really big number if you play on a long enough time horizon. And so it's just important to understand how powerful tiny gains are. A quote here, and I love this quote, it's just fantastic. I write, if God destined it for you, then it will come. There is nothing in the heavens or the earth that will stop it. So do not try to force the hands of fate. God gives what you need when you need. And sometimes you need pain. Think of all the benefits of pain. It strengthens you, it wisens you. It humbles you, makes you more grateful. And so do not see pain as bad or unfortunate, but as a test of principles and an increase in virtue. That to me was just powerful. Because again, pain makes you grow. If there was no pain, then you would never advance. We learn from pain. We improve from pain. Most people that get better because either a mistake that they made or a mistake that someone else made. And one that they saw. That's why they get better. That's why they improve. And so pain has its purpose. Pain is important. Pain is not bad or unfortunate. Pain is good. Another reminder here regarding memento mori and the concept of death. It says, live each day as if it were your last, without frenzy, without sloth, without pretense. And so say what needs to be said and do what needs to be done. Remember that you will die, and death comes without warning. How many relatives of yours have slept and never woke up? How many relatives of yours have had car crashes and never came back? All sudden, all fatal. That may be you. That may be your parents. That may be your wife. That may be your siblings. That may be your children. Prepare for your death and the death of others. You may never see them again. To live life with a clean slate. To thank your parents whenever you see them. To kiss your wife whenever you see her. To hug your children whenever you see them. And to say every goodbye as if it were the last. Because it may be. And coming back to that Luke Belmont quote, people who died today had plans for tomorrow. People who died this morning had plans for tonight. We don't plan death. We don't know when death happens. And we have to be ready for death when it does come. And it might come at any time. So we have to be ready at any time for death. Living life with a clean slate. That if you die tonight, you're ready. If you die tomorrow, you're ready. And everyone else is ready, and you're ready for anyone's death. Because it's not just about you. The world isn't about you. It may be your wife. It may be your kids. It may be your parents. And you have to be ready for that death. You may not see her again. When your wife goes to work or when you go to work, you may come home and your wife is dead. Sorry to say, but that's true. You may come home and your wife isn't there anymore. You may not come home. There may not be a next time. So keep that in mind, that every time is the last time, because one day it will be for someone. And there's another part here that says, do not live life as if you have endless years ahead. death overshadows you while you're alive, be good. Do good almost unconsciously. Let that become your nature. Like a horse at the end of a race, like a bee with its honey stored, like a vine after producing grapes, to not seek any return, nor make any fuss about it, to just go on to doing the next thing. Like a horse walking back to its stable, like the bee protecting the hive, like a vine looking forward to the next season. I think the focus of that one is just focus on doing good, focus on action, focus on what's on your control. With death overshadowing you, do not be worried about it. Do not have panic attacks. Don't be over fussed about things. Focus on what's in your control. You may die, so do what you need to do. And that's it. A marriage when young is filled with love, happy, joyful, exciting. Decades later, it becomes common. You are used to your wife's good qualities. They become normal to you. No longer happy, joyful, exciting. Just normal. Or you can choose to spend every day of those decades together appreciating her good qualities and thanking God for giving her to you, enjoying each moment together and valuing her. An old marriage can be kept young forever. Same events, different perspectives. And so you can go through life the same way. You can see the sun rising at dawn as it always does. You can go to work as you always do. Or you can appreciate the beauty of the sun. You can appreciate the work that you do. Same events, different perspectives. I think this one just gives a different way of looking at life, consciously noticing the good things and being appreciative of them, rather than just living life on autopilot, just going through, and this is normal. There will be things that become normal, and they won't be as impressive as they once were, and that's completely fine. That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Just making sure that you notice these things and they don't pass you by. And there's the last one here, which I really like. And it says, certainty over doubts, never allow doubts to paint false meanings. How much they trouble us, the problems that only exist in our minds. It didn't happen. It's not real. Don't let doubt create fake problems. And don't see these as problems. Even if it were to happen, then what has happened is for the best, and therefore it's not a problem. Don't permit your mind to have cancerous thoughts. Don't allow one bad day to destroy a good year. Don't allow one bad conversation to destroy a good marriage. Remember the whole, so many good things. Do not let the black dot on the white canvas turn it into a bad painting. It's very easy to let one bad scenario destroy everything. You have one argument with your spouse, you have one fight with your business partner, you have one disagreement with your client, and that's the end. That just destroys everything. It's important to remember the whole, remember all the good things about the friendships, all the amazing things. And yes, depending on what that bad thing was, it can be valid to terminate that friendship or, end that relationship. And that's okay. But just remembering everything, don't let one insignificant argument make you dislike and look at your wife in a negative way, where there are so many good things about her. There are so many good times that you've had together. And just one small, insignificant disagreement destroys that. Now you dislike her, you hate her, you view her negative. Don't allow cancerous thoughts, because they can make problems out of what isn't a problem. Again, making a mountain out of a molehill, it's something tiny. There's nothing there. And that's the end of the book. Those were my favorite insights from my book, A17 Diary Vol.1. Volume 2 will be coming out in probably 3-4 years whenever I have a next chapter of my life. Book 4 is currently writing, currently feeling through. And if I die before that time, because my life is not guaranteed, then I will make sure that someone close to me publishes this. So even if it's just book 4 or half an incomplete book 4, then that will be published as volume 2. And then all volumes will be compiled after my death into one big diary. And that's my collection, The Notes to Self. And I hope you enjoyed this episode and found value in it. You can get the book for yourself. It's available on Amazon, or if you want the free PDF, you can get it at agencydev.com/book. All money earned from the book will go directly to charity. these are notes to myself, not to people. So this is not value for you. This is value for me. And I'm just sharing what I'm telling myself. I'm just sharing my thoughts. So we've been able to get, I think so far in 2024, over $100 donated. In 2023, we've gotten about 300. Not too much, but good amount, considering that I have never really spoken about this book. Probably a lot of people don't actually know I even have this book. I even wrote this book, or where it is available. So if you'd like to get it, you can get it there, agencydev.com/book. There are links to Amazon as well as the PDF, free PDF that you can get. You can get both if you want. You can send it to your friends. You can buy it for a friend. I buy it for all my podcast guests. Enjoy it. Go through the whole thing. These are 3 years of lessons and insights, mostly mentality focused. A few things on business, but most of them are focused on mindsets and personal stories. So if you'd like to get the book, again, agencydev.com/book. Thank you for listening, and I hope my voice was not too tiring.